Would you like to move your bill, Representative Kozlowski?
Yes, Chair Howard, I would like to move the bill.
Representative Kozlowski moves that House File 4010 be re-referred to the State and Local Government Finance and Policy Committee. And Representative Kozlowski, I understand you have a DE1 amendment. Would you move the amendment? And it probably makes sense to move the amendment and then describe the bill. So I'll just call for the vote. All those in favor of the DE1 say aye. 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 Opposed? The DE1 is adopted. Representative Kozlowski, to your bill as amended.
All right, thank you, Chair Howard and members. It might feel a little like deja vu hearing House File 4010 on its own standings today. I just wanted to start by acknowledging that today is Homeless Day on the Hill, and this room is filled, and the Capitol halls of power are filled with our relatives, including well filled up with Duluthians here advocating for those who are housing insecure and experiencing being unsheltered. And I think that's very fitting and grounding for what we're doing today. Today also a new report came out from the Wilder study that shows rates of homelessness and housing instability is worse today than we were last year. And more renters than ever are cost burdened today than they were last year. And that includes seniors and children who are experiencing instability. Today there are 114,131 households without an affordable and available home. And on any given night, over 7,000 children and their families are struggling, and that our families make up 47% of our population struggling. And why is homelessness and housing insecurity getting worse today? In data and research shows that substantial variations in rates of homelessness across cities across the country. They tested a range of conventional beliefs about what is driving this prevalence, from mental health and drug abuse to poverty to weather to generosity of public assistance, low income mobility, so on and so forth. And the data is very clear that market conditions like the cost and availability of housing explain homelessness in our communities. And this research is clear that rent levels and rental vacancy rates are associated with regional rates of homelessness. Multiple studies show that rental prices are rising faster when there is a scarcity of available homes. And we're all feeling that. Low vacancy rates intensify competition for available units, and they're driving up our rents. There's ample evidence that strict land use regulations contribute to this housing shortage. Recently, in Minneapolis has been lauded for holding down rents. Flat rent growth in Minneapolis versus the rest of the state is attributed to the friendly development policies. Yet in most cities and map after map, as we discussed before, that most development space is restricted to the most expensive type of housing, large single unit detached homes. And apartments can offer more affordable housing solutions. They are homes. But local zoning codes severely limit where multifamily can be built and the number of home per acre that can be developed, severely restricting where multifamily can be built and unnecessarily limiting the size and supply. So to the bill, what this bill will do is put an end to our outdated and artificial exclusionary policies, and it will unleash the opportunities in every community. And I just wanted to also note that this work is the product and fingerprints of many, many hours consulting with colleagues and with many different coalitions and cities and counties and planners, BIPOC-led organizations, affordable housing partners, and more. Some of the big changes that you'll see is definition of what is multifamily. That is defined as 13 units or mixed use building where at least 50% of the usable space is for residential use. I want to be very clear that this bill says that it is strictly not allowed on parcels that are for single family, only in areas that allow for commercial activity. As you'll see in section 2, that it is permitted only in areas that commercial is allowed, except for where industrial zones where commercial is not allowed. And we don't want these houses and multifamily units to be built next to a chemical plant, for example. And so that's why we have also said that they cannot be located in environmental justice zone areas. One of the big gives for the cities that we heard in response is that they want, and we want them to have the ability to have a conditional use permit if and only if specific circumstances of the development raise legitimate and reasonable concerns to public health, safety, and welfare. You'll also see that the projects must comply with standards, performance conditions, infrastructure requirements, local requirements around public health, safety, and welfare. So that's things like water, sewer, police, and fire. We've also set minimum height requirements based off city classification. We've gone back and reworked that cities can impose height and setback requirements that are different than what is allowed on the parcel if the multifamily development would substantially vary in compatibility and scale with surrounding properties. We also have gone back and taken up new language that on the parking that would allow additional units or spaces for compliance with the American with Disabilities Act. We have retooled the affordable housing development bonuses. Only when affordable housing development is coming forward, cities have a menu of options that they can have choice and agency and flexibility to determine what works best for their cities. And also must still establish that administrative review process, but grounded in section 1599, which is what cities already know, understand, and follow every single day. And finally, this bill also makes it clear that cities must follow the state, federal, and other rules in terms of historic districts and environmental regulations, so on and so forth. So with that, I'll turn it over to our testifiers and to the public who want to comment.
Thank you, Representative Kozlowski. We do have a number of testifiers, and so we are going to have a 2-minute timer. So please keep your remarks to 2 minutes. If you hear a buzzer go off, please complete your thought, and then we'll move on to the next testifier. First, we have Reverend Emily Goldthwaite, Director of Congregational Organizing for Beacon Interfaith Housing Collaborative. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you. Chair Howard and committee members, my name is Reverend Emily Goldthwaite. I'm the Director of Congregational Organizing at Beacon Interfaith Housing Collaborative, a leading developer of deeply affordable housing in the Metro. I'm grateful for the chance to speak in support of House File 4010 because we believe our current zoning system is part of the housing crisis, and the bill you're considering today is part of the solution. Why does a developer have a department of congregational organizing? I'll tell you, about half my job at times is to train our organizers and members of faith communities to organize around land use processes for our buildings because we know that there will be opposition and that our current system favors the status quo. All of the communities where we develop have goals and comprehensive plans created with robust local input that compel them to approve it. Yet the process of approving each individual building invites neighbors in opposition to block them. Of the 20 multifamily buildings we have created in the past 20 years, nearly all of them have had to face some type of opposition during land use approval. I've witnessed almost half of these debates myself and mobilized hundreds of local residents to stand up for their values in land use hearings. Some of them are in this room right now. Even in Minneapolis and St. Paul, and in suburbs from Hopkins to Shakopee, it is universally the same attitude of racial and class bias that pushes planning commissions and city councils from following the goals and direction of their comprehensive plan. It's especially offensive to us as people of faith. Our religions teach the wisdom of considering who is my neighbor and ensuring all people have a home. Public debates over who does and doesn't belong in a city or neighborhood reveal how far Minnesota has to go in rooting out the racial discrimination entrenched in our housing systems for generations. Because of our model, we win these fights and defend the rights of residents with low incomes, but often by a single vote. The development of quality, affordable housing in Minnesota is a lengthy and costly process at best, and the work to overcome NIMBY politics adds years and millions to it. No one can afford this. I'd love to be put out of the NIMBY fighting business, please. Least of all, can people afford this who are waiting for a home today? Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Daniel Lightfoot, and on deck, Evan Roberts. Welcome to the committee.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Daniel Lightfoot with the League of Minnesota Cities. The League represents the collective interests of 838 member cities across the state of Minnesota. As we've discussed in this committee over the number of years, housing is a top priority for cities across the state. There are a number of greater Minnesota cities here today at the Capitol. And the tools that they deploy to meet community identified needs, from TIF to city finance infrastructure, city supplied land, et cetera. They continue to pull levers to support developments with policies and resources that are locally led and locally driven to address community identified needs. I want to first and foremost thank Representative Kozlowski for the numerous conversations that they have had with the League, with myself, and a number of other member cities and city officials, as well as the work and the time that you, Representative Kozlowski, and you, Chair Howard, and other members of this committee have spent in addressing city concerns with this bill. The bill is amended by the delete everything, includes numerous changes that reflect those conversations, and we really appreciate that the bill is now more focused and moving in the right direction. Some of those changes include important definitions that focus the scope of the bill, more reasonable height requirements, ability for cities to permit properties via conditional use permit, more reasonable administrative review process, and the influence of local choice as well in some of these decisions. While we do appreciate these changes and acknowledge that the bill is moving in the right direction, any legislation that usurps local decision-making authority on zoning for residential development continues to be concerning for the League. Given the short notice of the amendment, we haven't had all that much time to vet this language with member cities, but a few areas that we'd like to continue working with you, Representative Kozlowski, and this committee on include the fact that multifamily residential development is a permitted right in an industrial zone, despite limitations in the bill, which we appreciate, could still pose problematic. The parking restrictions are still problematic, and underbuilding of parking could cause spillover into city streets that are not designed to accommodate that dense parking. We also recommend that those limitations apply only to the multifamily residential development in the bill. We appreciate the administrative review process, which mirrors 1599, but we do think that that time limit is still unnecessary. And then just lastly, given that the middle housing language is not contained in the bill, we don't believe that the definitions of all the types of the missing middle housing legislation is necessary and should be removed to avoid confusion. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Evan Roberts, and on deck, Jill Hutmacher. They can correct me when we get there. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you. Chair Howard and members of the committee, my name's Evan Roberts. I'm a demographer and I've taught urban history and sociology at the University of Minnesota since 2010. My testimony is informed by my work but doesn't represent an official position of the university. I'm here to support House File 4010 and the wave of new housing options that it will afford if passed. As part of collaborative efforts to develop a national zoning atlas, I've reviewed over 100 Twin Cities area zoning codes. I sleep very well at night, and I'm working to expand this to cover the majority of Minnesota's population. Through this work, I've seen in detail how cities handle the apparently simple question of whether it's okay to allow people to live in areas where they've said it's okay to have stores and offices. The reason why I support this bill and why it's so necessary is that cities handle this straightforward question in a myriad of different ways that make it really difficult for us to build the housing we need in Minnesota. Let's take the simple question of whether you can build an apartment in a neighborhood commercial area, the smaller scale commercial zone that cities allow. Banks, small grocery stores, etc. In St. Louis Park, you can do this by right. In Maplewood, you need a conditional use permit. In Woodbury, you need a planned unit development. And in Lakeville, you can just build senior housing or an animal kennel, but not apartments or condos for people of different ages. This hodgepodge of restrictions acts to make it hard to build housing. This bill is a common sense approach. It's simplifying this mess, balancing the need to increase housing while maintaining some local authority to regulate projects for legitimate health and safety concerns. The legislature has the power on this topic, as many others, to set standards that benefit the state as a whole. We do this in lots of areas of governance, from education to public safety, and this bill does the same for homes, giving cities the opportunity to move on from the standards that the state has set. In this instance, our problem as a state is building enough housing for a growing population, and a population that's increasingly in smaller households. Allowing Minnesotans to build new homes near existing stores and offices is a straightforward way of finding new land for homes in areas that can already support them. Thank you for your action on this important matter.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, Jill Hutmacher, and on deck, Anya McDonald. Hope I got that right. Okay. Thank you. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you. Chair Howard and members, my name is Jill Hudmacher, and I am the Director of Community Development at the City of Eagan. I'm testifying today on behalf of the League of Minnesota Cities, Metro Cities, the Municipal Legislative Commission, which together represent cities across the state, including the City of Eagan. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. I would like to thank the author of this bill for listening to concerns raised by cities and revising the proposed language. We appreciate you considering our feedback throughout the process. However, I would like to highlight a few key concerns that cities have with the language of this bill. The bill takes away a fundamental city authority, zoning and land use, which impacts the ability of cities to plan healthy communities. As an example, the bill language allows multifamily development in commercial industrial districts, which often lack parks, sidewalks, and nearby schools and services, and are impacted by heavy truck traffic, noise, and smells. Cities plan for new development through their comprehensive plans. It's a big document that usually takes about 3 years to put together. Despite, and many tens of thousands of dollars, despite being a developed city, Eagan has added over 2,100 residential units in the last 10 years. This includes 400 subsidized and naturally occurring affordable units. An additional 350 units are approved, and nearly 500 units are in a state-mandated environmental review right now. Yesterday evening, after a year-long planning process, the Eagan City Council adopted a small area plan for former office properties surrounding Eagan Central Park. The planning process included extensive public engagement. The city listened to residents' concerns. Emails and public comments gradually shifted from anger and fear to excited and hopeful. The approved plan contemplates approximately 1,000 new housing units, new residential units in a wide variety of densities adjacent to the park and existing neighborhoods. The City of Eagan upholds this planning process, an example of the best of local land use decision-making: transparent, inclusive, thoughtful, and orderly. In my years of local government, I have seen many development projects improved due to public input at the local level. It can take time. It can be difficult. But when residents feel heard and can participate in the decision-making process, it builds trust in government and connection to communities.
If you could
Thank
please wrap. Oh, thank you very much. Next, we have Anya McDonald, and on deck, Mark Foster. Welcome to the committee.
Hi, thank you, Chair Howard and members. My name is Anya McDonald. I'm a government relations specialist with Metro Cities. Metro Cities represents the collective interests of cities in the 7-county metropolitan area. We appreciate the work of Representative Kozlowski and other legislators on this bill to include language to address many concerns raised by cities. Thank you for continuing to consider the concerns of local governments as you work on this legislation. Cities across the metropolitan area are advancing affordable housing with tools and resources that best fit local needs, including plans to use the local affordable housing aid passed last year to support housing needs in their communities. I would like to briefly highlight a few key issues we find with this bill as written. Many metro area cities that are primarily residential are focusing on adding to and maintaining their commercial sector to support jobs in the city that allow residents to live and work within the community and diversify their tax base. A potential redirecting of commercial property to multifamily housing may create inadvertent imbalances in these efforts. Metro Cities opposes language that allows only one minimum parking space required per residential unit. This is particularly problematic for areas not located near transit and preempts local considerations and decision-making. Some provisions in the bill appear to be contradictory. For example, development needs to comply with existing infrastructure, but allows for affordable housing developments to exceed maximum dimensional standards imposed by city official zoning controls. The proposed legislation ignores the role of local comprehensive plans, which all metropolitan cities have in effect and that guide development for the long term and allow cities to effectively plan for infrastructure. We look forward to working with the author and the committee as this bill moves forward and appreciate the changes made to the bill language this far. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Mark Foster, and on deck, Bradley Peterson. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and committee members, my name is Mark Foster. I am the Vice President of Legislative and Political Affairs with Housing First Minnesota. We are a trade association of nearly 1,000 members of the home building industry that advocate for housing policy that advances housing options for all Minnesotans. As the committee has talked in depth this legislative session, our housing market is chronically undersupplied. We need an all-hands-on-deck approach to our crisis, and this language is a part of that. Minnesota's housing shortage is 106,000 units short, 4 times the amount of construction we had in 2023. A shortage of this size is going to take many years to eliminate. No, or trust us, we've got this, is some of the commentary that we've heard around the housing supply issue recently. Respectfully, that's not an answer to our housing shortage and affordability issues. A balanced market of available homes and homebuyers provides stable price appreciation along with entry into the housing market for first-time homebuyers. Similarly, a balanced rental market provides affordability and accessibility to renters. We need housing abundance that leads to housing options and affordability. As our housing crisis's largest factor is the supply-demand imbalance, solutions must address the barriers to adding supply. Recently, President Biden told the National League of Cities last week, quote, "The bottom line is we have to build, build, build. That's how we bring housing costs down for good," end quote. Many other states have passed similar policy to this here before you today, including Florida, Montana, Oregon, Rhode Island, and Wisconsin. Other states that are currently considering this policy include Arizona, Ohio, Maryland, North Carolina, and more. You notice that this is a slate of both blue and red states. This should be a bipartisan issue. This is Minnesota's moment. In conclusion, Minnesota's housing market is dramatically undersupplied. For the sake of the next generation of home buyers and renters, we need to find every possible way to create good housing policy that allows for the creation of more homes of all kinds. Thank you for the opportunity to support the bill.
Thank you. Next, we have Bradley Peterson, and then Libby Murphy. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. I'm Bradley Peterson here today on behalf of the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities. As I indicated the last time I testified in front of the committee, you talked to any city official in Greater Minnesota, and I can tell you that they are bending over backwards and going to great lengths to accommodate housing in their communities. We very much appreciate the changes that have been made to this bill since it was first heard as an amendment to House File 4009. We very much appreciate the acknowledgement that adequate infrastructure needs to be considered by the development contemplated in this bill. We also note that more flexibility is given to cities to choose from a menu of certain special considerations rather than being mandated to accept them on the bill's terms. Finally, while we still bristle at the state imposing height regulations on development rather than allow cities to make these decisions, we do acknowledge that the ones outlined in this bill are much more reasonable than as originally drafted. We do, however, have a number of concerns. I think I would just basically highlight or endorse everything that Mr. Lightfoot said and Ms. McDonald said from the League of Cities and Metro Cities. One item that I want to drill down a little bit deeper on, though, relates to what Ms. McDonald raises in terms of cities building out and supporting their commercial areas. We are concerned about the potential loss of commercial spaces in our downtowns and main streets. Loss of the goods and services they provide, the impact on the character of the area as a destination for locals and visitors alike, and most significantly, the potential loss of tax base as property shifts from commercial to residential are all concerns. I think as we go forward through the legislative process, we'd like to continue to work with the committee and with Representative Kozlowski to address this issue in particular. We also have concerns about the parking restrictions in the bill as well. Thank you for the opportunity to comment on this bill. We're happy to continue to work with the author to address our ongoing concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Libby Murphy. Welcome to the committee.
Hello, my name is Libby Murphy. I'm the Director of Policy at the Minnesota Housing Partnership. The reason why 3,000 children, according to the Wilder study that was just released today, lived in shelters, transitional housing, or outside last October is because there's simply not enough homes. The data is conclusive. Homelessness is a result of a housing shortage. The reason why more than half of all renters are paying more than they can afford for housing, which is the most we've seen in our State of the State of Housing reports, is because the competition for housing is driving rent growth. Minnesota Housing Partnership and Habitat for Humanity of Minnesota recently released Revitalizing Minnesota report after months of convening various stakeholders. The aim of these convenings was to strategize how to maximize last year's historic investments. We were worried that we couldn't utilize these resources in every community because of restrictive growth and exclusionary zoning policies. Oftentimes, communities develop plans that say they will address housing, but the zoning isn't updated to match these plans. Parcels for multifamily are on the periphery, and they are not integrated into areas with amenities. For affordable housing, in particular, the status quo is not working. In one community, a market rate project moved forward. Across the street, the affordable housing project was denied at the same time. In another community, a market rate project was great for the community. When economies shifted and the developer added affordable housing, the project was out of character and too large. In community after community, I think it's this, but multifamily parcels are often not near amenities. They are sometimes isolated across freeways. And zoning hearings are not often about zoning, but they are about those people and how these projects don't fit community character. To further fair housing, we need more housing of all types in every community. Minnesotans deserve choices, but this is not the case for lower income Minnesotans. This bill will unleash opportunities in every community, and this bill will put an end to exclusionary housing policies. Because today is Homeless Day on the Hill, I want to point out that communities are finding people who are experiencing homelessness. People are being criminalized for experiencing homelessness, and it is to no fault of their own. It is the lack of housing in these same communities. I have testified before about the importance of our local partners, and sometimes that they do things better than the state, and sometimes they know better than the state. However, on this issue, this body, the legislature, can no longer sanction practices that make it this hard to overcome our housing crisis. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to testify? If not, we can go to member discussion. And I would note, members, that we did hear a version of this bill. So I'm going to hope to move to a vote by 4:15 so we can move a few other bills as well. Up first, Representative Dotseth.
Thank you, Chair Howard, Representative Kozlowski. Question I've got is, will this provision continue to move along with 4009, or will this be extracted out?
I think I can take that, Representative Dotseth. You know, the legislative process, you get as many irons in the fire as possible, and so we have a proposal that was sent out that has them combined. This is a bill that would have it as a standalone.
Thank you.
Representative Myers.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Representative Kozlowski. One thing I loved to hear was that, you know, that you've really been working with a lot of different people, and I think you can really tell from the version that came back. So I want to give you a lot of credit for that. I think the bill is heading in the right direction, and you know, from looking at my cities, you know, the people in my district, I just want to say thank you for that, for the directions it's heading, and you know, I'm hopeful to see that it keeps moving. So thanks.
Representative Johnson, Lee Johnson.
Chair Howard, Representative Kowalski, I want to thank you for actually working with trying to make this bad bill a little better. I think it still has a long ways to go, as we heard from the cities. They spend a lot of time and money on their comprehensive plans with a lot of input from the citizens and the community itself. They are very expensive to put together. And it's planning not just for where people live, it's all the infrastructure that goes along with it. The water, the sewer lines, other things as well, sidewalks, maintenance. It all goes into that comprehensive plan. And it's really tough on especially our small cities. I know in 4009 it was set up so it was only affected cities over population of 10,000. In this bill, that is not in there. So this is affecting even our small communities across the state. And hearing the testimony and stuff, it looks like the biggest problem is mostly in Minneapolis. From what the testifiers was I reading between the lines of the testifiers. So as this goes forward, I think it's a good experiment to look at, but I don't think it should be mandated across the state. Maybe you want to look at Minneapolis pushing this, see how it works there, because I think there's some problems that is really going to affect our small cities across the state and actually make it worse for them, more expensive. They're working hard to get in commercial industrial already, and then it can really affect that process as well with the infrastructure they put in. So I do hope I have a feeling this is going to be moving forward, and if it does, I hope you'll consider looking at those issues.
Representative Kozlowski.
Right, Representative Johns, Chair Howard and Representative Johns, I appreciate that, the comments and the encouragement to continue to work with many partners on this, which many of you know, we'll continue to do that. It's been many hours of log rolling and get to a place where this is going to work for that statewide approach. I just want to say that I think that's one of the benefits of untangling the bill or being heard on its own merits, because this bill always applied statewide, and while there are different menu of options based off of the city classification, this was part of the original House File 4009 as having that statewide and not exempting Greater Minnesota, though this bill allows for the nuances to be able to be right-sized by communities. So appreciate that.
Vice Chair Agbaje.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Representative Kozlowski, for bringing forward this bill. I really just want to commend you again for the work that you've done with each of the stakeholders. I think as we've heard from folks, this bill is definitely moving in the right direction. I think it's, at a place where we need to be to start to move forward about figuring out how we can continue to build more housing for more people in areas where they want to live, that's closer to their jobs, closer to healthcare, closer to schools, really building the communities that we want to see. It's also noticeable that this is for every city. I think we have people from across the great state of Minnesota in this room today who are here to hear about this bill, support this bill. So I think that is a tremendous achievement, ensuring that the housing crisis is all over the state. Finally, kind of my question to a lot of the cities, as one point that came up was this idea that the state is imposing on local control. And while sometimes local control, I think, makes a lot of sense, I think we also have to look at the history of local control and what that's led to, particularly in our housing market. And so I think what this bill does and others that have been proposed is, can the state create a baseline to ensure that everyone has fair and equal access to the housing market? And I think that this is what this bill is trying to do, while also providing those menu of options so that local cities can figure out what works best for them. I did have one other point I want to make, but I forgot it. But at this time, I think I'll just leave it at that.
Representative Cha.
Thank you so much for the work that you put into this. And, I think it's shaping up to be a good bill. I just want to make a comment. And the comment is, as we move forward in building more houses for Minnesotans, we need to think about the owner-occupied piece of this and how real estate is being purchased and sold, right? We have a company that owns 36,000 homes in the United States of America. It's being traded on the stock market, right? Blackstone has a $2.5 billion fund and a reserve of $10 billion waiting to buy more homes. As we move forward in this issue, I hope that we can address it also, but I commend your work and your passion for affordable housing in Minnesota. Thank you.
And I'll go to Representative Kozlowski for the last word, but just wanted to say a few words myself. One, to thank Representative Kozlowski. We've spent a lot of quality time together over the last several weeks working on not only this bill, but 4009 as well. And want to thank cities for being engaging with us, providing feedback that's now reflected as part of this bill. And I want to thank the cities that are working hard to build more housing. The folks here from Egan shared some really important progress. But what I want to highlight is no one city alone can solve our housing crisis. We have a statewide housing crisis. And despite the progress we've made in terms of getting feedback from cities, if I were to, quantify the feedback we've heard from cities on this work and the missing middle work, it's that we're doing enough. We're doing enough. Members, we are not doing enough to build homes in the state of Minnesota. If we continue with the status quo, we will never solve our housing crisis. And so I commend Representative Kozlowski for bringing this bill forward and for our work to make sure that we reject the status quo and make Minnesota a place where folks have access to a safe and stable home, because what we're doing right now doesn't cut it. Representative Kozlowski, to the final word to the bill.
Thank you, Chair Howard and members. And thinking about, we're a state that we decided and we made that decision that kids in our state deserve a free lunch, that they deserve to be fed when they go to school and have full bellies, that we're a state that has set forth that we would have body sovereignty and protect the health care of all peoples. And what this bill is really saying is that taking a step forward to say that every single Minnesotan, no matter your age, your race, your income, your ability, that we should be able to live in the communities that we love and where we want to make a life and in the homes that we want. And what this bill is really doing is setting forth that we already do by right status for single family homes, and that it is really giving choice and flexibility and agency and autonomy to communities, and making sure that our communities actually have the tools that they need to put forth more affordable housing, save time and money, and get this online for Minnesotans who desperately need it. While also taking into the challenges and the very real infrastructure struggles, the parking, all of these as we transform our systems. And so as we've gotten your support when we came here a couple of weeks ago for this bill, and now I'm asking your support to move this forward, that we can continue to work on those. As somebody with a business background who worked in cities, it's really important to me that we preserve our main streets, that we take care of our commercial spaces, and also this is an opportunity to increase tax bases and put that residential to work for our communities in a way that's not happening right now. So members, I really ask for your support, and this is a very good bill and a very important one for Minnesotans.
With that, Representative Kozlowski renews the motion that House File 4010, as amended, be re-referred to the State and Local Government Finance and Policy Committee. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Nay. The motion carries, and House File 4010 is on its way to State and Local Gov. Thank you, Representative Kozlowski.